Hi, my name is Louisa Riley. I will be the MC for the panel. Let's take a break. Like women and about women in data science taking gaps in their career. Today we have three panelists. Janet Carson from Echodyne, she's a data engineer there. Dana Lindquist from Nordstrom, she's a senior technical program manager. And then Anjali Agarwal, you're at CGen, and then you're a data scientist there. Okay. So I think to start things off, let's just have our panelists, we'll tell y'all a little bit about themselves and their career paths, as well as how much time they took off from their career, and why did they take time off in their career.
Sure. So hi, I'm Janet Carson. I was a software developer back in the 90s, and I took about 20 years off to raise 2 kids. And then my path back was, I'm not really going to be a software engineer again. This field has changed way too much. So I did a data science boot camp and discovered I really like building data models here. I'm sure that's not the right thing to say in front of a group of mostly data scientists. But I did find a data engineering job where I am doing software development related to data, building data pipelines, and managing a database, processing radar data. For a accidental radar company, we build radar hardware. Actually, our antennas are secret sauce. And then radar generate a ton of data, and you need to analyze it to figure out how well your product is tracking various types of targets.
I'm Dana Lindquist, and is this okay with the mic, I guess? I hope. Started out as a mechanical engineer and then got a PhD in aeronautical engineering doing numerical methods work. And then my husband got the opportunity to move to Wall Street and had a significant raise. And I was ready to have kids. So I took some time off, and it turned out to be a lot longer than I had planned, but we moved to Bellingham where we grew up. And then when our youngest, at some point there I went back to work at a company that built aircraft parts, and I became a project manager, a program and project manager. Got my PMP, moved to Seattle, and I got a job doing project management for a HVAC company, so back to the mechanical engineering thing. But we had a ton of data, and we started to do data science work, and I thought, this is cool. And oh look, there are these boot camps that let you get, with 3 months you can kind of get back into that. So I quit that job, did the Metis boot camp, that was about 5 years ago. Worked as a data scientist after that, and then when I applied to Nordstrom this last time as a data scientist, they said, oh look, you have a PMP and you're a project manager, maybe you want to be a technical program manager. So I am now a TPM for a data science group. It's been a great fit for me. Again, kind of like Janet said, back to all those other skills, you kind of gather all the skills, but I did take quite a bit of time off.
Wait, Dana, how much time did you take off?
18 years. Go ahead, Anjali.
Hello, my name is Anjali, and I'll give you a little bit background from very starting. So I have a PhD in biotechnology from back in India. My husband also moved to USA, and I moved with him. And on the visa I moved, that didn't allow me to work in USA. So at that time I took some break. It was about like 2-3 years. But during that time I was volunteering, like full-time volunteer. But after that I had my first baby. So that I quit volunteering also, and that was the true gap when I was not doing anything professionally. So that took around 2 years. But during that time I was also trying to switch my career. I was looking more into the data science. So I took a certificate from University of Washington, and then I keep applying for the jobs, and I ended up having a Python programmer at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center. And recently I joined Seizure as a data scientist. So it's been 6 months and it has been really great. And I'm working building machine learning models to help all the different things to bring like those cancer medicines to bring faster to patients.
All right, thank you for that. I guess just start things off, does anyone in the audience have any questions for our panelists?
My immediate question would be 18, 20 years. During that time, were you kind of connected to a little bit of aspects of your, like were you growing in that direction, or you were totally disconnected from the skills, or because then you got back, and how getting back is not easy after 18, 20 years without if you have totally disconnected from that environment.
I know, I homeschooled my kids, and I mean, I used computers, but I taught my kids how to program in Scratch, and but it was weird, you go back to the boot camp, and my fingers never forgot VI. There's things that you do so much in college, and just as a developer, that you just kind of do it. And I noticed when I went back into the workforce, my skills were very wide. There were things where I was very much totally a beginner, and there were things where I had a very mature understanding of the software development process, having been through it, because you really do have this excitement of building new features, followed by this panic of meeting your schedule and the debugging and everything like that. There's a lot of things that are kind of like a bike, and you can still ride it, and there's some things that were very different. I mean, obviously, I had programmed in Python before, but yeah, it took me a couple of years to really feel like my skills were starting to level out, where I was at the same level in all different things. I've gotten a couple of promotions just from the 3 years I've been at Acrodyne, and they say, usually you're in a level for like about 3 years, but because you bring so much maturity and stuff, you don't really need 3 years to catch up. So no, I did not come back in as a senior software developer, obviously, but I caught up and grown over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say no as well. However, I mean, I've got 2 daughters who are in their mid to late 20s now, and so what do I, I think about this a lot. And I do think that a great way to get back is to keep your network up while you're out. Do some things, it could be maybe, do a master's degree, an MBA or something, and take 5, 6 years to do it. Keep your network up, volunteer for, WIDS or something. It helps a lot when you're trying to come back. And I didn't have that. We moved. I was in Bellingham, which is not a big hotbed of technology. That said, I was PTA president, and I will still say, and I think it'll probably always be one of the PTA projects I did is probably the most rewarding project I've ever done. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anything could top the challenge of it. So, yeah.
For me, so my gap was not that long. But yeah, actually I was in the touch with the things, what is happening into that field. So I used to attend a lot of meetups, and I was volunteering on these like breaks or women bio or other this kind of thing. And even at home, I just read what is the new updates into that field, what is like follow some blogs or Medium articles and all those things. So I was in touch, and that really helped to first come back and also to transition from the biotechnology to data science.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way to do it.
We have a question here.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your experience. So I imagine coming back after a long time away is challenging in many different ways. And so what was the most challenging thing about coming back into tech industry? I don't imagine it's technical, upskilling. Sort of beyond that aspect, what's the most challenging? And then kind of related, what can companies do better to make it easier for someone who stayed away from workforce for a while to come back?
Oh, wow, that's a hard one.
If there is something that could kind of alleviate those challenges that you've seen in coming back.
For me, it was just working. You know, it had been so long that I was, and I hadn't worked that long. I hadn't been employed that long. And it was in a very, very small company. So how do you run a meeting? How do you take notes? How do you know, that kind of thing were rough. And I was really grateful that, you know, Zodiac Aerospace gave me the opportunity to kind of break my chops on that. But there's so many skills that you do pick up. And I think one of the things I really am going to write the blog post, that everything I learned about working with people, I learned from raising my kids. It's just, they're just people. And I've learned a lot from them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, you know, the boot camp was, you know, I know that I needed to do something to build some technical skills and to you know, have something to put on my resume with that giant gap, obviously, but also that I needed to, actually build technical skills up. But also just the attitude of the boot camp, where we're going to teach you, you know, it was like, you know, mile wide and an inch deep, right? So like each day there's a new topic to learn and a lot of things to dig into, and just that experience of having to Google everything and find it quickly and deliver something at the end of each project in the boot camp. Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm still, you know, in a boot camp.
You're always not, right? We're always overlearning.
Yeah, but you know, you can learn anything on YouTube and Stack Overflow, and you know, and also I think because I'm old school, I'm a documentation reader, and I will pick up things by reading in detail and just think, okay, this is what I need to learn. Here's how I'm going to learn it. I got 6 or 7 bookmarks, and get it done. And I think that just, you got to get it done thing that I picked up from the boot camp really helped me make that transition back to the workforce.
I think another challenge which I can also think, like sometimes when you are coming back, like Janet mentioned, you may not get the position what you were doing before, like the next position you may have to like a little bit down or a little level down, but if you will keep doing good work or something, you get promoted. Also. But it might like you come back and have to accept little lower position.
Thank you.
I have a question over here. I am not a mom yet, but I can see myself maybe wanting to be one in the next 5-10 years. Something I've thought about is like, is it possible if I could maybe work part-time, or would it make sense to take that time off fully to be a mom maybe for like the first couple of years or something like that? I was wondering if you were to do it again now, do you think that being in a part-time role or something like that would be a good way to stay connected, or do you think that it makes sense to just really take the time like fully off and then come back in later on?
I think it depends on you and what calls to you. I don't remember thinking a whole lot about the decision. You know, when I do things, I'm all in. And that's just who I am, right? I've learned that. That's just who I am, but that's not who you might be. So, you know, I was all into raising my kids. But some other people find that I need that adult stimulation so that I can be a more present mom to my kids. So it's a personal decision. I think kids do fine either way.
Yeah, I think that's really not something that somebody else can answer for you. For me, you know, kind of like what Yana was saying, actually, I had just moved from Texas to Seattle for my husband's job while pregnant with my first, and the overwhelm of, you know, moving cities and not having those connections, you know, people who have babies around here start thinking about their childcare well in advance. So I was not at all prepared to go back into the workforce, and then, but I think if I had thought about it more, I might have tried to do something more part-time. I don't know that that was part of my imagination. I had been a startup software developer. I worked on a lot of network-intensive code. So, and so it was pretty hardcore, and it was definitely not something I could have tried to balance with kids, I would have had to do something very different. And then, of course, the company that I worked for was, halfway across the country, so I wasn't gonna go back to work with them anyway.
And there was no remote work back then.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the times have changed so much. But I think that what Dan is saying is absolutely right. You need to think about, if you do want to go back, you should think about it, carefully, whether that's, looking for a part-time job in childcare or, doing, like she was saying, an educational path, but doing that part-time, or what works for you, what calls you?
Yeah, and I also want to add one thing, like being in a data science or like tech field, it can provide flexibility. So I was before in the lab work, so which doesn't allow to me, like you have to be there to work and you can't work from home or do some flex hours or something like that. So I think being in that tech space, you can also manage things like you can maybe just do freelancing work for a few hours or can be connected. So yeah, depending upon the situation, it can be like full off or part-time working.
Anjali, could you speak maybe to, because I know for you, your personal choice was to return to work. I know you did take some parental leave for more recently. Could you maybe speak to that and your choice to return to work?
Yeah, so the one I discussed before, that was like for my first baby. When I was not working at all, it was like completely paid. So recently I also have another baby who's 10 months old. So for that I took like maternity break about 3-4 months. And during that time, before I was programmer, as I mentioned, I was working at FedEx, and that was the time when I transitioned to the data science. So during that maternity break, I was upscaling my all data science skills, and I gave the interview, and I started working at the season. So that was all the time when I changed a little bit my field and also jobs. And yeah, that was like always in my mind, like I would just want to keep working. So that's why I just keep like motivating me, like to keep looking for what is available and how can I approach people or how can I network and how can I apply for the jobs. Yeah.
I want to add, it depends on the babies too. If they take a nap, some babies are good with naps, daily naps. It gives mom some time to, do what they want. My baby never napped during the day. I was always on board, so.
I have friends who worked through the first baby, and then when they had the second baby, then that's when they stopped working. It's, it was just like, this is just too much. This is not life that I want to live. But that's, again, that was their choices. I really think it can work either way. It's something you and your family needs to figure out.
This might be a little specific, but I understand how coming back after a gap, you would pass like a technical interview. Could you talk about your experience with behavioral interviews? They start asking you questions. Tell me about that one time you ... And that time was 10 years ago, or in another country, or whatever. How did you approach that? What kind of examples were you giving them? What were you talking about?
So, yeah, that one wasn't too bad. I could answer things from 20 years ago. Corporate politics is corporate politics, and people are people still. But definitely one of the things that when I was looking at different kinds of continuing education programs, boot camps, whatever I was going to use to get back into the workforce, the one that I picked specifically because I was impressed with the career counselor and the fact that I was going to have practice interviews. And the one big thing that I took away from that was actually having a name for what I was. I haven't been doing blah, blah, blah because I'm a return to work candidate. And just having that phrase. So when there was something that wasn't, like, the question wasn't appropriate to my situation, I just kind of said it. That's really not an appropriate question for me because I'm a return to work candidate, or and they would ask something different.
Janet, did you have
anybody, you know, how did people react to when you spoke about that? Because I think that's one of the questions, the elephant in the room is how does it look in your resume to have that big gap?
I mean, I'm sure it didn't look great. But, you know, I think the other thing for me was, you know, the other thing from this career counselor was they did a LinkedIn thing, and, you know, she kept beating on me, like, you gotta, you know, show who your personality, show who's your personality. I was like, I don't have, you know, any of this, you know, and I was very panicky. And I finally calmed down, you know, I wrote, you know, I'm kind of a math and science geek. And sure enough, I got picked out and recruited by somebody for a company where, you know, where the two's supposed to be on the clock, there's a square root of 4. You know, it's, you know, eventually, you know, and you just have to trust in the universe and keep trying. You know, be yourself. And, you know, that part of that is just being honest. You know, hey, I'm a return to work candidate, I'm not going to have all that stuff. Some of it's, you know, trying to get comfortable with saying
This
who
is
you
what
are.
I do have.
This is what I do have,
Right.
this is who I am, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had as many people say, wow, that's great, as, you know, I mean, people don't, I think that people have been pretty accepting of the idea that, well, I took some time off, okay, great, what can you do? This is what I can do, okay.
Yeah.
But it's, for me, it's now been several years since I can't even count.
Yeah, I mean, they're not
More
gonna
than
ask
10.
you for an interview if they thought that that was, you know, something that they weren't comfortable with, at least considering hiring.
And also, I feel like you can also give some examples of these behavior questions, which I found like very challenging than the technical one. A couple of examples I just made through my certificate experience, what I had there, and how we, like in that program, you have to build a team and solve some problem and do a project or something. So something like from there, I will make some example like how the teamwork can work or something. And I think it's also fine if you have some example from your parenting style or other kind of, so that also can work to answer those questions.
I have a question, if nobody else does, because I'm a volunteer. Okay. I have 2 questions, actually. One is, so I'm in a position right now where I've taken time off, I've had 2 kids, and I'm in the messy part of getting back into the field and having also changed careers. And I'm not quite sure how that relates to marketing myself, or that turns out to the best way to market myself with recruiters. Do I call myself a mid-level career person? When you approached
That's a
returning,
hard one, yeah.
did you start as an entry-level data scientist, or did you go right to mid-level? And how did you, like, one of the things I'm also experiencing is a bit of doubt when I'm in these technical interviews or even whatever, trying to make sure none of the kid mess on my shirt shows and I'm a grown-up again. And there's doubt in my answers. So it's, yeah, how did you do the messy bit? How did you market yourself? How did you get others to believe in you when you're still, I don't know.
think it's the doubt that you have to work on, because you need to project the strength of all the things that you've learned, because you've learned a ton of things being a parent. I mean, I'm serious that I learned so much raising my kids about working with other people and managing and juggling. And somehow you have to find the confidence in yourself, say, I deserve this job, and I can do this job, and you hire me, I'm gonna be great. You know, and then you project that energy, and somehow, and I know it's hard, because you don't feel like, hell, this isn't the world I've been living in. But I think we all are, it's like even my PhD, right, and all that stuff, it comes back to bear, the things that I learned doing that, and not the specific stuff, of course. I mean, who cares about Fortran, but, you know, life is, all the experiences you have in life, they all add up. So it's not really 18 years off, it's 18 years of other kind of learning.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, if there was a meetup for interview practice, I was there and practicing and just, yeah, just finding those people to answer questions for. And, you know, I could kind of tell when I was gonna land a job, because suddenly I was the person giving other people advice on their resumes. It's like, oh yeah, look, you can put this, and this, and and people will like that. And I could kind of tell when I was finally getting my interview skills up too.
But your experience hadn't changed, just the way that you were presenting yourself.
Yeah, but I mean, also, like, my confidence was changing when I was able to give other people advice at these interview meetups.
Yeah, and I think you can also check the job descriptions and see if you can definitely do all those things and you have some experience. You can just market yourself in that position. Like, you don't have to go down if you can do everything what is listed in the job description or something. And also do some like informational interviews with the companies you are applying. What kind of level they are, generally people are there, and what kind of skills they have. And if you have those skills, then you don't need to go down or look for your position.
Another way to do, you know, if you leave for a few years, is to try to come back into your network. I think network is really important. And that's why I think that it's worthwhile while you're taking time off to keep your network up, right? Keep having coffee or something with the people you used to work with, you know, come to stuff like this, meet people. You know, a good company will hire you back. If you've been gone for 2 or 3 years, and you've kept up some relationship with those people, that's what could easily help you get a job again.
Yeah, and the companies also have some returnship program, which I haven't explored that much, but some of the companies also provide some internship or something, so that can also be explored.
So just for the record, if no one's heard this before, a returnship is like an internship, but it's for people who are returning to work, I guess.
I don't know what you think. I mean, this is not exactly a question, but the most challenging time for me was when I went back to work. Maybe you have a similar experience. And after maternity leave, and 1 month after I was laid off, but right after I went back to work, it was the most challenging part for me. Just my baby crying in the other room. I was working remote on my desk doing something that really needed me to focus on. And when I was laid off, I had mixed feelings. I was a little bit sad because I was very excited to go back to work after my maternity leave, and then I was very happy because I can take care of my baby for a few more months without having to do my full-time work. So that was very challenging, right, when I got back to work. I feel like I could have dealt with gap easier than just going back to work and seeing my baby cry. But like, I'm so distracted, like, but I don't know, this is not exactly a question. I would, I don't know, I would just, I'm curious how other moms think, like, yeah.
I feel like, so especially after this pandemic and having remote work and kids are all around, people don't mind that much, but if like it's a very focused work and it's like important meeting and kids are crying, yeah, I just try to be prepared for that beforehand, like maybe I ask my partner, my husband to take care of that during that time. And I think it's totally fine if they are crying behind. I don't know, I never find my teammates or anyone like they are not happy with why you are not working seriously, they are not taking me seriously if my kids are around. They are there, like last week it was spring break, last week or the last week, and she was hanging out around me. So yeah, that hasn't been challenging for me that much. And also like, at least in my team, I can like change meetings. I can also like flex, so is the morning is the time for the kid for sleeping, so can we move that meeting to at that time or something. So it's working fine so far.
I can talk loud if that's easy.
We
are hoping that would get
No, I forgot my question. How do you, in interview processes, advocate for, I wouldn't want to say accommodations, but some of the flexibility that you may need as a return to work parent that would have just been assumed if, say, you would come back from maternity leave, right? So if you're coming back to work with like a teenager or a grade schooler, like you might need some flexibility for like picking your kid up at 3 o'clock, how are you making sure when you get through an interview that your company's gonna meet those needs?
Is anybody here that are able to answer that question? I don't feel like I am. Any managers?
I can speak to what I've seen at my own company. I'm not a parent myself, but I've had managers and senior managers who are. At least, I work at Deloitte. They tend to be pretty flexible about moving meetings, especially since many of my colleagues work in different time zones. So usually they just ask to move the meeting. I know my husband, many of his coworkers also are parents, and they just say, hey, I can't do the meeting at this time, I'm picking up my child. I think it's become more accepted. That actually, I have a question for all three of you.
But how do you ask about that in the interview?
Yeah, that's the
That's the
question.
question, is-
How do you vet a company that says that they're flexible to make sure they're not just flexible for the occasional Friday afternoon skiing, but actually flexible for, my kid gets out an hour early every Wednesday and there's no childcare. Like, how do you kind of suss out the attitude in a?
Well, there's Glassdoor, I mean, for reviews and
Or
stuff.
I feel like you can just ask, like, when during the interview, you have like first HR round and then maybe hiring manager, and you can just ask, like, I may need some flexibility in what they look like. If that will not work with you and they're like, oh, we are very not flexible, that's the timing, 9 to 5, you have to be there, whether you're working or not, then maybe that's not the good fit for them.
I would bring up the work-life balance question, and then in there, you know, you can say, well, how's the work-life balance here, and how are you, what's the flexibility on the daily, you know, day-to-day tasks. But I would definitely check online the reviews on Glassdoor, because I mean, that does it.
I mean, it's a good point. It's kind of that you have an infant at home versus you have a 7-year-old versus you have a teenager. They all need parenting at different ages and different levels of parenting at different, times of day are critical. Teenagers somehow want to have these really deep conversations late into the night. It's not quite the same as getting up in the middle of the night to feed them, but parents need flexibility, regardless of the age of the kids.
I know, it's scary. I don't actually have a question, but I just wanted to weigh in on that because I think it's kind of super important. When I went back to work the first time, after all my kids were born, I did interview and I asked that question and they totally wanted to do it and they could not keep themselves from scheduling meetings at 3 p.m. And the answer is that I quit the job because it wasn't how I wanted to live my life, and I found a different job that I could just say up front, like, hey, I have a hard out at 2:25 every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever it is. But I guess my point, to people who are thinking about it, is that I think we get hung up on thinking that there's one solution or one way forward, or you have to go back to work now, and if it doesn't work, it's never gonna work, but there's a solution there's a different solution for every set of circumstances, and there's a different solution when your kids are 2 than when they're 8 than when they're 15, and as much as you can remind yourself of that, this too shall pass, I think that's helpful. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to hijack the thing, I feel really strongly about that. My experience, that's what that's been.
So we appreciate your input. This is supposed to be more of a conversational thing.
Your answer's making me emotional.
I mean, that's what I said, it's like, do you go back to work quickly, or do you take a year off, or do you take a long time off? I think it's kind of what's calling to you. There's no right answer, and there's no right answer for kids. It tends to be this You know, there's the people who took took time off to be with their kids, they're trying to justify what they're doing, and there's people who, who stay at work and use daycare, and they're trying to they're both reasonable choices.
So I have a question for you three. So how have you seen attitudes to people returning to work change over time, even if it's in the past couple of years, or in your case, maybe 20?
Well, I think, the pandemic has changed things a lot, because I remember these guys who would come to work and you didn't even know they had kids, right? They'd come to work and they did their work and then they went home. And next thing you know, we're working from home, and Nikhil's coming to stand up in the morning, and it's sitting on the lap, and it's like, okay, Nikhil, what are you gonna do today, right? and it's like, this man is a different person, right? And I think that men have brought their family lives to work a little bit edge more, they tend maybe, it's a stereotype, but more likely to shut that side of their brain off when they do go to the office. So I think that's been really good for women who in general don't, to mix the two and talk about the two. Remote work is great for parents. I know people who get up in the morning, work for a couple of hours, then the kids get up, they block out an hour, okay, this is get the kids up, get them dressed, take them to daycare, and then they come home and go back to work. Or work at night. That flexibility has made things fantastic. No commute. That helps too. We didn't have that.
No. But I also think the pandemic wasn't, something that you planned, and the transition from in-office work to remote work was really hard for me. I was just so ready to be out of the house and around adults and to be stuck at home. And, I was starting to get used to the emptiness, and my kids had to come back home. I think that the remote work can be an option if that's what you planned on and that's what you're working on and that's, what was calling to you. But, I'm much more happy hybrid now to have some days where I know I can leave that laptop in my office and completely disconnect when I go home. It's really important to me.
Yeah, me too. I'm the strange person that goes to the office all the time. An empty office. Whole floor to myself.
But if you don't mind me adding, I think that those 2 years of the pandemic really helped. It was awful, but really helped because I think it gave, in this men's society, it gave the men the exposure of having the kids and the daycare at home and the meals and the online school that they have no idea what we did with our kids. They just went to work, came back, honey, I'm here. So then for 2 years they knew, oh man, this woman just puts on 2 full-time jobs. And I think that changed the way that things are right now. I work here at Expedia and I see right now, this company is super flexible. I tell you, I have coworkers that they have a hard stop at 2:20 or at 3 because they have to do daycare. Or they said, okay, we're gonna work Tuesdays and Thursdays in the office, and they're like, no, Thursday I don't have daycare, so she comes on Wednesday. So they are very flexible, but those are things of, I've never seen that in my professional life before COVID. And now I think that even men go, yeah, just let her do it. Let's do it. It's a different world.
It's interesting, like reading the news and stuff, that there's kind of a backlash, and companies are really pressuring, some companies are getting, news for really pressuring their employees that you have to come back to the office now.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting to see how much that sticks, because I think we've all changed.
Yep.
For that, how the people's attitude after. So I do not find anyone like, if I'm returning back there, they will behave differently. Even, so my break, I did transition also, and I took not like, so it was programmer to, I was doing before research scientist, and then I go to the programmer. So I already knew that it won't be like senior position. So I don't know, I found maybe by luck or whatever, all my mentors, managers and teammates, they were quite good, and they were like trying to teach me and like tell me like how can you do things, and I didn't find their attitude like, oh, you are coming back, you don't know anything, then you don't do that, we will not give you the projects and or something like that. They will give me and then also willing to teach me. So yeah, I found maybe by chance or by luck, they were pretty good.
But Anjali, you made a really good point of you can take your career and bend it towards the flexibility, bend it away from the workbench where you have to go in every day to data sciencey things where you can have a little more flexibility. Right.
That was one of the also reason to move from the lab work, but I do like science, and so that's why one of the reason me to maybe doing science in a different way, not maybe lab work, maybe I can do the tech side, I can support through that way. So that also actually helped because the domain was kind of same. Before it was science, now I'm also working with the science, so I know what is the research data looks like and all those kind of things. So when you're coming back, if you are also transitioning, maybe you can try first with this similar kind of domain or similar industry.
Yeah, I tell people who's switching all the time, it's like you have a lot of experience and you leverage all that experience. And like I said, even the PTA experience, right? That's, that's where I learned to be a project manager.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, like to plan all those play dates and all these summer camps and with their friends. Yeah, it's like all Excel sheet and this week you need to go rock climbing with these are of the friends. Next week you need to go there, and then remember them, dropping them, picking them. A lot of management.
During your break or gap, did you ever think about switching directions totally in the directions of your hobbies that had nothing to do with your education and just totally doing something different? Because it seems to me that either with transition or non-transition, it was relevantly close to what you had degrees in, but did you ever have those thoughts or those?
It just helps a lot to leverage your past experience in a slightly different way. I mean, that gives you things to talk about, and these are things that you know. So when I got the job as a project manager in an HVAC company, it's like, well, but you're a mechanical engineer who's a project manager, right? That it just helps your story.
Yeah, let's be honest, if you're working in tech, it pays well, and there's not a lot, if you can go back into a well-paying career, why wouldn't you? I mean, I guess I really didn't think about, not trying to use my technical background in some way.
Yeah, I think I was also talking with you once that I think one thing which I thought like I could have done during my break. So I was very worried that, how will I will take a transition and how will I will come back. I think if I will go back, I would try some other activities or use that time to do other things which I like or, yeah. That also a good time
Like
where you can explore.
you mean like remove the worries part away? You would remove that away because eventually it worked.
Yeah. Eventually you will get, and that can also give you time where you can reflect on other things, other aspects of your life. So I think it's just enjoy the time.
I think that it helps to negotiate with your partner about, a certain budget that you're going to need to do to support yourself. So, you want to go to, WINS conference, or you want to, back when we had meetups, you want to go to this meetup and keep going. So you're going to need childcare every Thursday night or something. Or, I looked at going back and getting an MBA. It was going to be like $30,000. That was a lot. I didn't actually do it, but if you wanted to do something like that, you kind of need to go negotiate and say, okay, I'm going to take time off. I'm going to take 6 months. I'm just going to be with the baby, and then I'm going to start doing this MBA program. And it costs money, right? And you need childcare to do that too. That's kind of part of, you just got to, like when I quit my job to do Metis, that was a big deal, right? You got to negotiate or talk about it.
I'm curious, this is a question for anybody in the room actually, and it's built on the question right over there. Does anybody know of part-time data science roles? Do they exist?
We have one woman who does not work on Fridays. She works 4 days a week, I believe she's 80%. And there are no excuses, she does not ever work on Fridays. But she'd been with us before, I think, I'm looking over there.
Yeah, she was with us, and then she had 2 kids. I don't know if she went down to 60%.
I'm not sure when she.
I'm not sure the support.
Yeah.
I support her now. But yeah, she works 80%, does not work Fridays, does not check Slack, does not do anything, and it's great. She's one of my most productive data scientists.
When she's there, she's
When
there.
she's there. But she also, if she needs, her kids are sick all the time, she has the flexibility as well.
I mean, it is hard.
It's hard.
You know, you do miss things if you're not there on Fridays. But I think, and this is another question for the room, I think even if you're working, it's going to be hard to go all out and be, you know, you're going to take some, you're going to step back and not lean in nearly as much. Because, I mean, shoot, that's a lot, raising a kid and doing a job. I don't know how people do it. But I do understand that it's very doable.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, like, I have one kiddo expecting number 2 soon. And just thinking about career progression and sort of knowing, yeah, I have a lot of colleagues that are really focused on advancement, and I feel my manager is supportive of the, like, shallower path that I'm taking right now. But I still, like, am ambitious and want to progress my career, but I'm gonna have 2 young children. So, like, how do you advocate for yourself to make sure you're getting those high impact projects that will help progress? You have, like, a trust from your manager that you will be there to deliver.
It's hard to do it all. Because then also you're going to be the best dressed person in the room, and your house is going to be clean all the time. And I mean, like, probably not, right? I think so, you know, things have to give. So maybe the clean house is what part of what gives, right?
I mean, to answer your question, like, I had a similar experience where I wanted to be that person, but I had a manager who was convinced I wasn't coming back from maternity leave. He was like, oh yeah, we'll see. You say you're coming back, but we'll see. He didn't think I would come back because that was what he wouldn't have come back. And so when I came back, I knew I had to be aggressive about being nosy, honestly, and listening for the projects that were kind of being worked on or were available to say, like, hey, I'm interested in that thing you're talking about. How do I get invited to the meetings? Or being like, oh, I must have missed when that started when I was on leave. Can I read the documentation? Or just being, like, pushy, essentially. That, like, hey, I've heard these things are going on and I want to be involved. Because, I mean, my experience was that they will just assume that you're not interested in taking on the bigger things. Like, you don't want to go on that project that's going to mean that you're going to travel. Whereas you may be like, this is the only time I'll get to travel. Please put me on that project. So definitely being pushy got me more of the projects I wanted.
Maybe it's being honest too, just letting them know so that it's not just what they're assuming, that you tell them, I'm happy to travel.
Yep.
I don't, you know, it's like a vacation for me, for my kids. I would love to be able to travel.
And I'd love for you to pay for it.
But they won't know because they're going to assume based on whatever experience they have if you don't actually have the dialogue.
Yeah.
I think something to be said about that.
I think that goes for any career progression, not just like saying like coming back from maternity leave, sorry, just saying, I think that goes for any kind of career progression. It definitely probably happens in the situations coming back from maternity leave. I haven't experienced that myself, but I can see it happening. But advocate for yourself in any situation. Don't assume somebody's going to hand you a promotion
I had a pretty fast-paced career growth, but I was very much like, I got promoted, what do I do next to get it? Don't assume anyone's gonna hand it to you, you're the only person in control of your career growth.
Yep.
I think for my second round of working life, I'm thinking more about that, you know, do I want a promotion? Do I want to do something different? Do I want more? Do I want less? You know, the questions are much more, you know, with my level of maturity, those questions are kind of stronger in front of my brain, right? I'm not going to have, a 30-year career at this point, right? I don't know, exactly what age I'm gonna retire at this point, but, my time in the workforce is limited, I wanna use it effectively, and, asking for what I want and thinking about what I want carefully is important.
That reminds me of a question I had regarding retirement. Do you think having taken a gap means you have to work longer than maybe you had originally thought you would before you can retire?
I think for me, coming back, once I started working, like I said, I'm an all-in kind of person, and I had goals for myself. And yes, I have tried to take a 30-year career and shove it into a lot less time. And I've had to work hard at that. So there is that, right? I don't know that anybody needs to take 18 or 20 years off though, to have great kids. It's circumstance in some extent.
I mean, there is an opportunity cost, right? I'm living on one income, we didn't have the same lifestyle that we would have had if I got back to work right away after having kids. But we did live, within the one income means, so we're not, financially destitute because I took time off of work. And, once we got past paying college tuitions, it's really not that bad. It's to save for retirement as well as, things that we want to do with our money.
For me, I don't think that much about it. I do have 401k and all those things. But yeah, I don't think too much when I will be retired. I don't want to retire early or late because I'm taking the break or something. I should not save money.
Wait, can you repeat that last part? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm also thinking, should I think about it more or I should not, because I think it's working fine for me. And I'm not thinking, at least right now, I'm not thinking to retire that early, so that will that will mismatch with my career gap, I took that gap, then I have to work more. I'm thinking to work till I can do. Yeah, maybe I'm not thinking right now taking early retirement, so I'm not giving that much thought on that saving for retirement.
But I do think, with thinking about retirement, it's like, well, what do I want to do in my job, but what do I want to do in my life? And I am, it's like my kids are pretty important to me, and who they've been in my family. So I think there's a time in our lives when we feel like career is everything, and then maybe it's not. It's important.
Yeah, it all depends what you want to do. I mean, if there's one advice that I can give people, it's like, even if you don't think about retirement, plan. Because when retirement comes, you have to start planning when you're younger. I mean, saving money, because that's how you're going to retire and have a good life. But being very close to retirement age, I mean, I'm like 3 years, 4 years from there. I mean, I'm 60. I tell you, you start thinking different. You start thinking, wait, I worked hard all my life. I get paid, I have all this money, I want to enjoy it. I want to retire.
And all those goals that you had as an employee, maybe they start dropping off, and all of a sudden it's like,
Right.
okay, well, that was past, right? Now,
Right, exactly. So you don't have to think about it right now, but plan for it, because when that age comes, you really want to be ready to say, you know what, I'm done with my career. Now I want to enjoy life to the fullest on my personal side. And maybe not. Maybe you say, I'm 70 and I still want to work. I mean, then again, it's a personal choice.
I don't think maybe I will not maybe not do the same thing what I'm doing. Maybe my
Right.
interest will change.
Yeah.
That is life. Life is this river,
Right.
and
Yep.
it goes all sorts of places. And when you're, 20 years old, you feel like you've got to, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
But if you take a gap year or 2 or 3, you don't have to work 3 years extra to just make up for the time that you took off. I mean, it's, as long as you're financially planning and you're content with the life that you can have with the money you saved, I think you're okay.
I don't know where that's coming from, but we are out of time. It's not.
Okay, we are starting.
Oh.
Somebody's
We're at
happy.
time, right?
Somebody fidgeting up there.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Okay, so, do we have time for one more question?
We
Or
are-
should we just call it?
We are over, so we should.
Oh, we're over time. All right, so then, thank you so much,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Really appreciate the good conversation. And a big thank you to our wonderful